Hi. So one more thing in a children's bedding setting that we're making. We've made a quilt, we've made a sheet trim, we've done a pillowcase, and every child, as we know, needs a little hat to wear to bed, and so we've got our little nightcap here. So what I've done here is to make it so that it adjusts for fitting different people or different size heads, is we've added a little bit of what we call Velcro. It's the hook and loop system, so that will make it sit on the head quite nicely, we hope. So to make this shaped hat, I've got a square of fabric here, so I've cut an 18-inch square of fabric, and to make the little trim around the edge here, I've cut a 2.5-inch wide strip of fabric which I've already pressed in half along the length. So it started out as a 2.5-inch strip, but I've already folded it in half. And then for the fastening, this hook and loop, I've got about 1 inch or so of the stiff loop one, and the hook one, and I've got about 1.5 inches of the softer loop one, which we'll pop on later, but that's what you're going to need to make one of these hats, because like I said, everybody needs one. So to cut the hat to the right shape from the square, we need to fold it in half diagonally, the fabric, and then we're going to fold it again diagonally, so that it's going to be a triangle a little bit like that. And then we do need a couple of little pins to help us mark this. And probably your measuring board's pretty good, or a tape measure if you've got one. We need to, because we know that the sides, because we cut the square 18 inches, we know that that's 18 inches down to here. And if we pop a pin in, it'll just hold it in place nicely for us. And then, so along this edge here, same thing, we want to mark about where the 18 inches is. So we can just use the marking on the board, or as I said, if you've got a tape measure handy, that would be good. I haven't got one handy. So that's in there, but probably one more would be helpful. So we can just fold it one more time. And again, just run that along the edge of your board till you meet that 18-inch mark, and pop another little pin in there. So we've now got 3 little pins. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this in a bit of a curve. So if we come from here and follow this line through to the edge here, but we're going to be able to make sure that we've got that nice little curve which is the right shape for this hat. So I'm going to start from here. I've got the raw edges from the original square just here, and I'm going to be coming in to where this pin is here. You could mark this with a pencil or something if you would be more comfortable doing it at this stage. So I'm going to start coming in on that curve right round to where this pin is out there. So it won't matter if it's very slightly off or anything like that, but in general we want that curve to look a little bit like that. So I'll open it out and show you how it's going to look now. So this piece here we don't need anymore. You can use that for some other delicious project. And so what I've got here now is 1/4 of a circle. So that's another option. You could just draw a large circle and make 4 hats. But anyway, this is what we're doing. So I've got that large circle there. I've got my strip that I'm going to border that hat with. That's going to come around here. And so we're going to sew this on next before we do sew the hat up into its shape. So I'm going to just start from one end. I'm just going to let that sit a little bit over, and I'm going to sew it so that I've got the trim on top and the hat behind. Now you don't really need to pin this because we're going to ease that, the bottom of the hat fabric, we're wanting to ease that so it's just a little bit full where it joins on. So you can just let this extend. This strip is longer than we need, so you can let that extend a little bit past it. We're going to use our 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to start and do a little back stitch. And then just allowing that curve to go, I'm going to hold this strip piece and just put a little bit of tension on it. And what happens when you do that is that the feed teeth underneath will start pulling this through a little bit faster because I'm pulling a little bit on the top one. And it just gives it a little bit of fullness, which I think is a helpful thing with this sort of hat. So you can see that it's a little bit full coming in there, and that's exactly what we're hoping it to do. Any other seam and it's sewed like that, we would be unhappy, but we're actually trying to achieve that this time. So you're not pulling too tightly, but just a little bit of tension on that strip and just follow all the way around that curve. Until you get to the other end. And again, a little back stitch. And so you can see from this side that it's a little bit rumpled, which is what we were wanting. We don't need these little bits extending now, so we could trim those bits off. Finished with all of that now. And so I'm going to now just, that seam pretty much stays exposed inside the hat, so I'm actually going to just go around now with a zigzag stitch and overcast that. So if you're going to use a zigzag stitch, make sure that your foot on your sewing machine can cope with the swing of the needle so that you don't damage anything. And I'm going to select my zigzag on there. And so I'm just going to zigzag right over the raw edges just to stop any fraying that might happen there. And this time you're just letting it feed itself as usual. Already overcast that. It didn't take so long. It's a fairly quick project, this little one. Because it's from an 18-inch square, just a fat quarter will do it if you're a quilter and you know about fat quarters. So you can see now when we're going to join this up shortly, but we've got just that little bit of fullness which was just going to help the hat sit nicely. So what we're going to do now is join this long seam, so we want to put it in right sides together. And I'm going to start from here so that I make sure this all matches up, because if anything kind of moves a little bit, and sometimes fabrics do move just a bit, it won't matter too much if we've gone off a little bit on the corner or something, but it would matter if you were at this end. So I'm going to start here and match my seam. And yes, you could pop a pin in there if you want to. I'm just going to take it straight to the machine and start sewing. Again with your 1/4 inch. Now because we're starting on an edge that's going to be an exposed edge of the hat, I'm going to start sewing just a little bit in, maybe 1/4 inch down from the edge, rather than right at the end, so that you don't have the possibility of your stitches unravelling, because we're going to back stitch it. So I'm starting in a little bit. Oops. First of all, you need to come off your straight onto your straight stitch. Okay, on the straight stitch now. So I'm in it just a little bit, and I'm going to back stitch right to that edge and then forward, and then seam all the way up to the point. Again, just with your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So this is great fun for that little person in your life. Yes, it's a little bit frivolous. However, it's good to be a little bit frivolous at times. You can see I've just wandered off a little bit on that, the way the fabric's moved, but that's not a problem. Just keep going, do a little back stitch at the end, and it's done. And then we're going to overcast that seam as well, and because I've wandered off just a little bit there, and when I made the other one it did the same thing, so I was expecting it was going to happen. It just wants to do that. So I'm just going to trim that seam back, just that little tiny bit off there. It's worth trimming it off because everything will sit just that bit nicer if everything's level. And now I'm going to come back again and go back onto my zigzag stitch and overcast that seam. And the same thing, I'm going to start this seam just in a little bit and back stitch, so that I haven't got the little raw ends at the very beginning of the seam. to put that fastener on and we'll be done. So I am just going to trim off that very tiny point on the corner there. Just be careful you don't trim your actual straight stitching. Don't worry about the zigzag so much, just because it's going to help that point sit a little bit better when we turn it out, which we're going to do now. Now you might find you want something to help push that out. I find that often it'll go almost all the way, and then I can get a pin and I can usually just ease that little point so that it's pretty pointy on the end there, but you don't want to pull it through so that you make a hole in it. Don't be rough. Okay, so that's a fairly good point for a little hat. So looking good already. So now I'm just wanting to pop this little bit of fastening on. This is so that it can adjust to suit, and I thought something like this would work quite well. You could put elastic in or a little sort of ribbing edging and things, but I wanted to use the cotton fabrics, and this seemed to be the answer. So I'm just going to stitch these bits on. So I'm going to stitch, this is the loopy bit just down here, and I'm just going to pop that in and sew it with my straight stitch on the sewing machine. And this will allow for a little bit of adjustment for different size heads and things. So just leave your needle down when you get to the corner and pivot around. You'll find that although this stuff's a little bit strange, you can sew it on fine. So nearly done. So excited. I'm hoping to see this on a little person at some stage, or even a big person maybe. And now I'm going to sew the other piece on here so that when we put it over, it'll be able to close over with a little bit of adjustment available. But you might have a child on hand that you can measure. That's probably even better, because then you can make sure these bits are in the right place. I don't happen to have a child on hand, so I have to guess and hope for the best. And that's it, we are done. One little hat ready to go. So that'll just sit over somebody's head and close over like that, sitting on the head to adjust. And how fun is that? Little thing's going to pop over, and we've got a great little night hat. Everybody needs a night hat. So there's going to be another video. I'm going to show you how to make a bag to keep all your linen in. So we've been busy making hats, and we've been making pillowcases, and we've been trimming sheets, and of course you'll need a bottom sheet, which we're not doing anything to, but to be part of the set. And then there's going to be the bag to store it all in. So if you would like to come back and watch the next video, you'll see the set completed and work out how to make a nice bag to put it all in. So thank you very much. That's it for this time, and one little night hat better off. Everybody should have one.